Good evening and welcome to the Bella Vista Area Radio Club's August virtual meeting. Thanks for joining us. My name is Tom, call sign W5XNA and current president of BVRC. I hope you and your family are doing well, staying safe and healthy, and active on the air. Well, tonight we're having another of our shack visits, as well as a how-to presentation on installing coax crimp connectors. Before I introduce our shack visit presenters, I would like to thank and acknowledge new BVRC members that joined the club in July. Brigham Mayer, KI5, TRA, Buster Morrow, AD5AM, who is now a life member of BVRC. Jeff Slocum, KI5, KDT. Ron Nev, KI5, KDU. Welcome aboard, gentlemen, and thanks for putting your trust in the Bella Vista Radio Club. Now for the presenters. First, we have Stan Ross, K5VR. He was first licensed in 1971. His grandfather was his first Elmer, K5VRC, who is now a silent key. Stan has many awards, including the DXCC Honor Roll. Stan is an active HF mobile operator, mostly CW. And from what I hear, he's a pretty darn good musician. And he is, by all accounts, a all-around nice guy, and I'm very glad to consider him a friend and mentor. Next, we have Dr. Murray Harris, W5XH. He was first licensed at the age of 16 in 1959. He's an Army veteran. He served in the 101st Airborne and the 27th MASH unit in Vietnam. He is a retired diagnostic radiologist and nuclear medicine specialist. He is an active member of the radio club at the University of Arkansas. He operates mostly using digital modes on HF. And if that isn't enough, he's a Elmer to many. Next, we have Steve Norris, W5KI. In November, Steve will have been in the hobby 56 years. He was first licensed in 1964 at the age of 15. He has a 20-plus year career in the Air Force, and he has a very impressive bio on QRZ. Another great guy. Next, we have a married couple, the Katzes. Sheila, K0ETA, and her Oscar Mike, Alan, KE0QFO. Alan was in the Marine Corps. He retired after 20 years, and then he moved right over to working at the Naval Hospital at Camp Pendleton, where he spent 18 years there as a general safety manager. Sheila has been in the customer service industry for 25 plus years, and they are soon to celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary. So congratulations, guys. Last but certainly not least, my friends and Elmers, and also friends and Elmers to many, Mark Watley, K5XH, and Don Banta, K5DB, who have been previous virtual presenters, and they will give us the demo on installing coax crimp connectors. Well, this is another great lineup of presenters. I want to thank each one for their willingness to take time, put their video together, and for their membership in BVRC. And a special thanks to Wayne, K5UNX, for putting this presentation together. Fine business, Wayne. Thank you for all you do for the club and for putting these presentations together for the last few months. It is appreciated. Well, now it's time to sit back, enjoy, and perhaps take a few notes.
All right, hello everybody. I'm over here at K5DB's house trying to put on some coax connectors, and he wanted me to show you guys how to do it with a crimp-on setup instead of the way everybody's done it for years. And to do that, you need a few little tools here. This kit right here, I can't remember where I got it from, but this is a little kit that you can buy with a crimper, a set of cutters, a couple of, they call these strippers, but as you'll see in a minute, they don't really strip anything, but you'll see. And then I've added a few extra little pieces that are kind of fundamental. X-Acto knife, you got to have it. These little scissors for trimming the braid if you need to, and this thing here is just to help peel the outer covering off of the coax here in a minute. So here's how this works. And whether or not this is any better than the old-fashioned way, I'll leave it up to you guys. First thing you do is take these things and you make sure you got a nice clean cut across the end of your cable. And when you look at it, if it's not round, or fairly round, you can take this and go like this. Now if you use a pair of regular cutters like these and try to cut that, you will deform this interconductor right here, and that makes it really hard to do anything else with later on, because then it won't fit inside, it won't fit in that hole down in there if you mess this up very much. So these things have got these special curved jaws on them that do a little bit better of cutting it without deforming the inside of it. So with that, now you take this thing, and unfortunately this thing, it's okay. They call it a stripper, but it doesn't really strip. What it does is it makes 3 cuts into the coax. And if you open it up a little bit, you can kind of look down in there, you see there's 3 blades inside there. And the trick is to try to get those blades adjusted as far as the depth. The first blade, the one that's out on here, is supposed to cut all the way through the outer conductor, the shield, the dielectric in the inside, and stop just short of the center conductor. The next cut is supposed to go through the outer covering and through the braid and touch into the dielectric in the middle, but not really cut it very much. And then the last cut is a cut that just goes through this outer black part right here. And you adjust that with these little screws in here. And unfortunately, the tool doesn't give you enough adjustment to really set this thing up really right. And I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about here in a minute. So what do you do with this thing? You take it and you put it on a coax like that. Now where you put it, you can gauge that pretty easily by taking the ferrule and holding it up against there and seeing where you come out here. If you're a little bit longer, that means some more of this is going to stick outside of the end of the connector when you get done with it. So I've got it on a little long. So let's move it back a little bit to right about there. Now when you put it on, it's about right. Now you take this thing, you notice there's an arrow on it right here. Take this, put your finger in the hole and go like this. And you go around about maybe a dozen times or so. And if you're lucky, those blades will cut down through everything it's supposed to cut down through. Take that off, and this is why it's not a stripper, because you see it didn't really strip anything. All it did was cut in there. It made a cut here, made a cut here, and it made a cut here. So obviously the first thing you got to do is get rid of all this stuff from the first cut out, except for the middle. And here's why I didn't want to booger up your desk. That should just come off, but you can't because it's too tightly bound to the braid. So you have to help it a little bit. You make a cut down it and relieve some of that pressure, and now you can, if you're lucky, you can peel most of it off here. And you see that came off. This coax has got two shields on it. This is, DX Engineering's high grade coax that I have a piece of here. Now eventually this piece right here's got to come off, and the cut went on down in here, but it may not have gone all the way. So now you got another problem, because this polyethylene or whatever this is kind of binds itself to the center, so you can't just pull it off. So what I do is I help relieve it just a little bit by making some cuts with this knife to try to get rid of some of that stuff without boogering up the center of it if you can. And after you make a few cuts around it here to help get that, as much of that out of the way as you can without tearing anything up, you can kind of see where the cut went all the way down through it there. You got to do this because it won't turn loose of that very good. So when you get it kind of good, now you get good old arm strength, and you come back in here with this thing and you kind of relieve it as best you can, and then try to pull it off like that. And you want to make sure that you tightly don't mess up the strands any more than you have to. So now you got it to that point. That's really one of the harder things to do right there. Now this next little piece, that's where the cut is right here, should have gone all the way down through the braid and this foil. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite do that because I can't adjust that tool deep enough. So what I do is I kind of go around it a time or two and cut some of the foil and stuff with an X-Acto knife. And then come in here and do the same thing I did before, is cut off this little piece here. And now all this stuff right here needs to go away. And you can see what that does is it produces a little bit of gap between the braid and the center conductor. So if you got any high voltage, this gap right here is what keeps the shield from getting to the center conductor. Now the last little piece here, before you pull it off, you got to remember to put this thing on. So if you got 100 feet of coax and this is the first connector you put on and you forget this, guess what you got to do? You got to start at the other end of the 100-foot piece and put it on. So you just put it on there so it's where you got it. Now then, we got this piece right here to cut off. And again, make a cut, but don't go too bad with it. You don't want to mess the braid up any more than you have to. And that's what I bought this little screwdriver for. You can use it to kind of help push and peel that away. There we go. And just peel it off. Oh, sorry. And now then, for you guys that are used to putting connectors on the old way, here's one right here. You're kind of at that point right now. You would put this guy on, you would work it down, you would then start kind of screwing it on. What I used to use with these, I'd put a little Vaseline right here, or glycerin, and then you would just feed this on there and you would screw it on until you could see the braid through those little holes right there. And then you would get out your blowtorch or your big, you know what, soldering iron, until you could heat all of this up hot enough to start solder flowing and all of that. And that's the big disadvantage of doing it that way, is you will melt this, especially if you're trying to put this on foam. This stuff here is a little bit better. So at this point, you could put one of these guys on using the same technique. But if you're going to do the crimp on, if you watch some of these online, they say, okay, the next thing you do is you just take the connector, you carefully feed it on there till it goes in there, and you shove it down on there, and you shove this knurled part here. This also, you just shove this knurled part here under that braid. Well, you can't do that. So they lie a little bit. So what you have to do is you have to come in here and you have to peel this braid away a little bit. And this coax has got that blooming foil thing on it, so you have to be kind of careful and not peel the foil part off. And if you do a little bit, when you go to push this on, it won't go on right. So you have to kind of go around this thing. It's not very pretty, but pushing the braid away from the center part of it, and I'm leaving the foil intact. And you kind of look around, make sure you got it. Now, if you don't get all this braid cut off, that's what these little scissors are for. Because I'm not going to cut it, because that's about right. You can go around with these little bitty scissors and trim it off. So now when you get it like that, all you got to do is put this guy on, and it will go over that foil if you did it right. And you push it down to where it just kind of runs into the braid, and you don't force it at this point. If you do, you can't get this thing on. You just kind of run it down till it touches, and then when you get ready, you go boom, and there you go. Now, I'm not going to crimp this one because it's just a blank piece, but to crimp it, take the crimping tool. This has a bunch of different dies. This is the right one for this size coax. You open it up, get it over the thing, and you get it about where you want it. And you'll notice that when you pull this back a little bit, you see where the braid has come up over this knurled part of this part of the connector right there. So when you push this up, you want to make sure your crimper starts right about here. It crimps from there down and not all the way up, because then it'll only crimp to right along in here someplace. So you just put this guy on there to right about there, and then you start crimping. And if you want to show them what the crimp looks like, we'll crimp them on your coax here in a minute. So basically, guys, that's how you do it. Then you got to solder the center conductor. So be sure and solder the center conductor when you get done with it. And that's about it.
Hello, BVRC members and guests, and welcome to the W5XH Ham Shack. This is the operating position here at W5XH. On the desktop, there is a Yaesu FT1000MP transceiver that is as good as the day I bought it 24 years ago. It's stood me in good stead for many years, and it's still an excellent radio. Above that on the shelf is a SPE 1.5K solid state amplifier that is connected to the IC7700 and IC7610 and operates essentially as a black box with gain. It follows whichever transceiver I have selected, both in band and frequency, and automatically has the antenna tuned as soon as I hit the PTT key or hit the Morse code key. Above that is a 13.8 volt Samlex power supply that I use to power some of the accessories and also the Yaesu FM rig that's on the desk. Immediately above that is the control panel for the remote antenna switch that is up in the woods behind the house. And above that is the control panel and display for the Yaesu FTM 400DR that I use to scan all the local repeater frequencies and some local commonly used simplex frequencies. And I keep the other receiver on the 147.135 repeater because I am a control operator for the W5YM repeater, and I always monitor it. On the desktop, adjacent to the FT1000MP is a control knob that is connected to the IC7610 and allows me to tune either one of the VFOs from down on the desktop. It also has a PTT switch and 2 switches to allow me to switch between receiver A and B. And above that is a Palstar AT2K antenna matching unit that is currently not being used, but does a good job matching almost anything. And sitting on top of that is the IC7610, which is the big brother to the IC7300. Has 2 separate receivers, 2 pan adapters, and is fun to play with because it's modern technology, and it's decidedly different from the other radios. Sitting on top of that is a SWR bridge power meter. Then over here to the left on the desktop is an N3ZN paddle, a single lever paddle, a Bencher BY1 paddle, a wind keyer, a D104 base and shell. The active element in that microphone is a Heil HC5 electret condenser that I put in and took out the crystal element many years ago. The next up is the IC7700. It's a really fine rig. It's laboratory grade quality and is a pleasure to operate. It has an output of 200 watts. Above that is a Heathkit power meter SWR bridge and a Heathkit clock. The monitor that you see is connected to the IC7610 right now, but I can push a button and connect it to the IC7700 so I can see the transceiver operating parameters without having to turn around if I'm operating one of the computer modes. It makes it real convenient. Next is an iMac that is running WSJTX. Right now it's on FT8, and the program to the left of to your left is MacLogger DX. So the WSJTX mode downloads QSO information directly to MacLogger DX, which then automatically sends the data to Logbook of the World, EQSL, Hamlog, and to ClubLog. So that's all done automatically, and I don't have to mess with any of the logging functions. Then I have a dual screen set up using a Dell computer below the desk. Right now, the right monitor shows HD SDR, which is a software-defined radio program, and this is hooked up to the IC7610. It's more of a novelty than useful to me, but it's sort of fun to play with. Then also on that screen is a duplicate of the control panel for the SPE amplifier, so that when I'm facing the computer screens, I can control the amplifier's operating parameters with a mouse over here instead of having to rotate around and hit buttons on the amplifier. The last monitor is running Ham Radio Deluxe, and it is connected to my 7700, and I use it for PSK and RTTY and the other digital modes such as Olivia, and have occasionally used it for CW as well. And that's pretty much it from W5XH. And now we'll look at some other stuff that I've got stashed away in different places. And this is on the other side of the room where I've got some handy talkies. I've got a DMR handy talkie on the right, and then a Yaesu FT60, an old realistic scanner, an ICOM IC24AT that must be 30 years old at least, and a Yaesu FT1D. And this is my Maha battery charger. I've pretty much converted to rechargeable batteries, and I use Panasonic Inloop batteries, which I think are the best batteries that there are. And so that's pretty much it for the gear here in the house. And I'll go out and we'll look at the workshop real quick. We're out in my workshop and storage area. There's a parts bin, several parts bins, a realistic scanner that I scan aircraft frequencies with, and hanging up from some hooks, an MFJ 1786 mag loop antenna and an Arrow satellite antenna, handheld satellite antenna, various and sundry chemicals, pegboard full of various and sundry tools, a couple of meters, an analog and a digital meter, TMV71A Kenwood dual band rig that I scan the local repeaters with, and also use as a control radio for the W5YM repeater, powered by Samlex power supply. Over here in the corner is a Dell computer that runs the Echolink node, and the radio itself is a Yaesu FT5200 dual bander, and an old Rig Blaster M8. A Heathkit frequency counter, another Radio Shack scanner, and matching Heathkit CW rigs. One is the receiver is a HR 1680 and the transmitter is an HX 1681, and a matching speaker. Then over here, one shelf lower, two older 2-meter rigs, an ICOM ICR 70 receiver, IC 7000 and IC 706 Mark II, a Dentron Super tuner, an ICOM automatic antenna tuner, and two really old 2-meter rigs that I used when I lived in Little Rock. And next is a Heathkit SB102 that I built in 1972 when I got home from the Army, and the station monitor that goes with it. I have a Hal keyer hooked up to it, and a Bencher BY1 paddle, and an Electrovoice 664 microphone. There's a Johnson matchbox also connected to it. And up on the shelf is another Johnson matchbox, an MFJ tuner, cut 3 or 4 SWR bridges, PK232, Pactor modem, Altec audio filter, and then back over this way, my toolbox. Everybody has to have a red Craftsman toolbox. And that's pretty much it for what I have out here in the work shack. I do, when I'm working on things, I usually use a white towel so that when I drop parts, they don't bounce, then bounce on the floor where I have a hard time finding them. And it also makes them easier to see when I drop them, as I invariably do. Anyway, that's what's out here in the secondary operating position and in my workshop. Here is where all the coax exits the house, along with a big grounding cable. And the coax goes into alpha delta lightning suppressors and then is distributed to various antennas. This coax here goes up and is connected to a piece of hardline that goes up to the antennas in the woods, and this goes up to an Arrow J-pole up on a vent on the roof, and then I've got a 35-foot push-up pole that right now doesn't have anything on it. And behind that, it's probably hard to see, is a white stick sticking up. That is a Comet CP6 UHF VHF antenna. This is a view of the antenna farm up south of the house, and I would challenge you to find the antennas, but I'm going to walk up there and show you the fan dipoles and why it's nice if you live in a POA to have a lot of trees to hide antennas in. Now I've climbed the hill behind the house, and you can see there is a piece of hardline coming up here, goes through a 1-to-1 Ballon Designs choke ballon, and then into the 5-position Ameritron RCS8V antenna switch. And from there, coax goes to 3 different fan dipoles that have 3 antennas on them each. This is the center connector for the 40, 20, and 17 meter fan dipoles. It's up about 30 some odd feet in a tree, and works real well. And then the other fan dipoles are very similar in construction to this one. They all are connected to ropes that go through pulleys and then down to a bucket full of rocks that keeps tension on the wires. But when the wind blows and the antennas move and the trees move, the buckets go up and down and the wires don't break. These antennas have been up here 3 or 4 years now and have been essentially trouble-free. Here are 2 of the counterweights that go to 2 separate fan dipoles. And when storms come, they move up and down a little bit and keep the tension on the wires, and don't let the wires break. So it's a very good system, one that Woody Charlton loved, and it's really a nice way to keep your dipoles from breaking in bad weather.
Welcome everyone, this is Steve Norris, W5KI, and welcome to my house here on the side of a pretty good hill. It's great in one direction, but it's a little bit blocked in the other, and I'll show you that as we go through everything. Here's my deck area. Gives the view off to the distance. The hill's over there, anywhere from a half mile to 2 miles away. And I have a grate right over this direction here. That's basically due west, but I have a clear shot from about 210 degrees around to the north and east, about 090 due east. I start getting the hill blockage a little bit, but this slope down to the lake below is about, which you can't hardly see because of the leaves, is about, probably 45 degrees. So it makes for some pretty good antenna takeoff to the northwest, especially, and the west coast. As far as antennas, about everything I've got except for VHF beams is wires. And I do have a vertical, a stepper vertical, which works out quite well. At the moment it's under the weather, so I'm having to work on that. Ham shack's on the 2nd floor, so I come out up there, down, and then I've got this at about 8 or 9 feet so I can drive under it. All the cable goes over to this spot over here. And though it's not pretty on this end, it is quite good for disconnecting. I'm disconnected at the moment from the rain that just came through and haven't reconnected. And so I have my rotor cable, 3 control cables, 1 for the stepper and 2 for the 2 remote antenna switches I have, and then the 2 coax runs, or the 7/8 inch hard line that goes to each of the switches. If you look up the hill here, I don't think you can see it, but about halfway up there's a pipe, and that's the switch for up the hill. And I've got several antennas up there, especially a very low 160, the vertical, and a small Moxon for 6 meters to the south, which gets by, but obviously I wish I had a big beam up there. And the other connection of 7/8 hardline runs about 175 feet out to the garage, where the other switch box is. We'll be heading out there, and that's where 2 or 3 other wire antennas are, and the 2 VHF beams. That it's not very pretty. It's a little rainy day, and this time of year I call that a pretty day. And you can see the drop off here as it heads down the hill. In the winter, obviously the view is much better and you can see it, but it is a drop off, especially out here, which helps one of the beams. I'll show you here in just a moment. I do park out here now, and so that's kind of nice. Keeps the varmints from eating my my car like it has for 14 years. There's the switch box on the bottom of the push-up pole going up to, I hope you can see it, is a 6 meter 5 element 6M5X, and above it about 4 or 5 feet is a 9 element 2 meter beam. And they do a pretty good job. Right now they're aimed to the northwest, and the equivalent height above the terrain at this point probably makes them perform a lot better than you would expect for such a low antennas. Sorry for the mess here. I've kind of let things get away from me, but here you can see the coax coming in, and here's the switch boxes. I use the RCS 8, I believe, that has a control line. It doesn't do the DC through the antenna, but it's 5 position, and I have 2 of them, one up the hill, one here, and all the cables. One extra beam I have right out here is a little section of tower, which I could use a pole just as easy. And I've got, if you can see it here, there we go. We've got a 4 element 6 meter beam just fixed here due west. Yeah, pretty broad pattern because of it's got about a 12-foot boom on it, made out of TV antenna parts. Matter of fact, I've made probably 5 or 6 over my time on 6 meters. Here we are inside the house. Upstairs in the loft area is the ham shack and all the memorabilia and everything. I try to keep downstairs looking most of the part, well, a little neater maybe. Keep it normal. And when I go upstairs, it becomes a ham shack and a mess. So I'll try to not show you too much of the mess, just the station itself. A 2 meter brick amplifier for the ICOM 7000 that I use as a backup rig, but mainly also it's primary on 2 meters, and 432 for the little bit that I do there. Swinging around, fans to keep everything cool. You'll notice on the brick, it's a 120 volt, very noisy fan, but you can run WSJT modes and key down pretty well all day with that roaring on the fins of that. Computer up top, an Asden that I listen to the local repeaters on. I do have dual monitors, and even yesterday I was saying, man, I wish I had 3 of those, but anyway, no place to put them, and the current computer wouldn't drive it anyway. Starting on the left is a rotor controller for the Yaesu rotor I have. The main Yaesu unit broke years ago. I think that's pretty common at times, and so I got this as a much reduced price, and it does a great job. I think High Gain now bought these people out and took over the process. There's the control boxes for the remote antenna switches. One of my better purchases, but not cheap, is the Micro Keyer 2, which is its own sound card and all kinds of interfacing with the rig for everything. Keyer, it's just a really top-notch unit. I've used it for years. I hope it never breaks. What can I say? The rig is a ICOM 7600, and you can tell that at the moment it's on 6 meters, where I was doing some testing a minute ago. Down here, this red switch is actually the control switch. I have bought surplus, very cheap, but a very, very expensive crossover relay that'll handle well over 1,000 watts, way up into the UHF regions. And what basically is you have the 2 coaxes fed in, and the 2 from the rig cables in, and one's connected. You flip this switch, power it, it instantly crisscrosses. So basically at any moment, if I've got the ICOM 7600 on bank of antennas number 1, which is the normal lights off position, the second bank is automatically on the ICOM 7000. If I come here and I hit the switch and hold it down, it instantly flip-flops in an instant. I wouldn't do it with the amp running, but instantly flips, and the antennas on the second bank go to the ICOM, and the first bank of antennas goes to the 7000. Moving around, I have the ACOM 1000, 160 through 6 meters, 1000 watts, basically key down, not forever, but pretty close, much more than you'd be key down. So it'll cruise along on the WSJT modes without really, matter of fact, I've hardly ever heard the fan go very fast on it. Control box down here, because I do have a new addition to the shack. I got a KPA 500 solid state amp, and the KPA, the KAT 500 antenna tuner that goes with it. Two reasons. One is the instant on. You cannot believe, with the 2.5 minute warm up, how many openings on 6 meters I've missed, or people just anytime just shut down by the time the amp warms up. And with the wire antennas I have, they're always in some kind of disrepair. You know, if the let's say a dipole for this band goes down, and I need to use the 160 meter dipole to power everything. Obviously, the SWR is way too high, and even though the ACOM will take 3 to 1, this tuner here will go 10 to 1. So basically, I can sit there. It saves the memories, and with no antennas breaking, I've got it. It almost is like it doesn't matter which dipole I use on any band, though obviously it does, and I will make those changes. But it's I've just not had it too long. I'm loving it so far. As soon as 6 meters really shuts down for the summer, and I'm back on HF most of the time, I think I'm really going to love it. One last thing, I guess it's item number 3 about it, is with the instant on, of course, is that I caught myself not changing bands very often. In other words, if I was sitting there running 20 meters and looking for DX, and I saw a spot on 15 meters, retuning the ACOM, which is a manual tune amp, it's quick, it's fast, but there was this mental thing that I just wouldn't tend to do it. So this way I can just tap the key on the new band. Instantly the KPA 500 is over on that new frequency, and I'm calling, and then go back to the old frequency, tap the key with a short dash, and pow, I'm right back where I was. So that's what I'm really looking forward to as I get past the VHF season, because when the band really opens on 6 meters to Europe or Japan or something, I'm going to power up the big amp, work who I can for 2.5 minutes, and then switch over to the 1000 watts. But on HF, I think most of you guys with amps know the same thing, is that not a whole lot of difference on HF between 500 and 1000. So the 500 watts here, solid state, instant on, change band instantly, is something I've wanted to have for a long time. On around, all kinds of junk around here, the laptop, and quite honestly, that's really about it at the station. I enjoyed having everybody come take a look, and I'm looking forward tonight to seeing everybody else's presentation here at the club meeting. Thanks a lot. This is Steve, W5KI.
Welcome, fellow club members. This is Alan, KE0QFO, and welcome to the Buzzard's Roost. This is my little place that I call home, and do a little panoramic view of what it looks like from the front yard. Little shot of my 2-meter isopole. That's for my shop radio, 2 meters. It's pretty much all I use it for is when I'm working in the shop. And this is the ham shack. It's always a mess, always a project going on. So there's all kinds of good things in here, from power supplies to antenna tuners to radios, just a little bit of everything in here. Always something to do. All right, from here we're going to go on into the wife's ham shack and show you her radio.
Hello, my fellow hammers. This is K0 ETA, Kilo Zero Echo Tango Alpha. This is Sheila out of Washburn, Missouri. This is a very quick tour, and I mean a very quick tour, of my Radio Shack. If you look down on the desk, underneath the right-hand side of my computer monitor, sets my ICOM D-Star ID 5100. And to the right of it, sets my Yaesu FT65HT. Both of them are dual band transceivers. And below my keyboard is my power supply, and off to the right of it, you probably can't see it very well because it's kind of hidden underneath the desk. On that pull-out tray, we have a little hook set up for my mic. That way it's out of the way. And like I said, it's very simple, but it does the job, and I'm very happy and proud of it. And that's about it of my tour. I told you it was quick. Anyway, I want to wish you all a wonderful day. Y'all take care. 73 and God bless. Again, this is Sheila out of Washburn, Missouri. K0 ETA. God bless.
Hello everyone, this is Stan Ross, also known as K5VR in the Tawnytown area. And Tom has asked me to do a brief rundown on the station here at K5VR. So we switch the camera around and we'll start with the antenna system. Okay, this is walking into the shack, which is kind of small, but just enough to get this L-shaped disc in here. I'm going to have to come inside and close the door to be able to kind of show you around without showing you all the stuff that's stashed in the corners out of the way. The main operating rig now is the ICOM IC7610. Right next to it, there on the right, is the IC756 Pro 3, which I still use occasionally, but it's more on the backup status. And you might have noticed there's a few bugs and keys and straight keys and other associated Morse code equipment sitting around. The W1AW 100th anniversary Vibraplex is encased with very little time on it. Just pull it out occasionally. And the little paddle here with the red handles was my grandfather's original paddle from 1964. He was K5VRC down in Alma, Arkansas, where I grew up. And of course my first Elmer from about the age 2 up. Been a lifelong hobby here now, these almost 49 years. There's another Vibraplex bug that I picked up off of eBay several years ago. It doesn't see a lot of action either, but they're pretty to look at. Now, before I added the dual monitor setup, which from this angle they hide quite a bit of stuff. There's the map and the clock and a few certain mementos on the wall. But when you take the operator's chair here, as we'll do in just a moment, it gives you a good idea of what's going on. If you're familiar with the N3FJP logging software, that's on the right monitor, and then over on the left monitor I keep either QRZ or FT8 or reverse beacon network, whatever I'm doing at the moment. But over here, and then the other monitor is just simply an extension of the IC7610. So whatever is going on the 7610 is also going on over here with a little easier on the eyes display. So if we'd been here a little earlier, the band would have been full of signals from the QSO party, but it looks like everybody's about wound down for this evening. Again, the more maps on the wall showing the different zones, the ITU zones, the CQ zones, other things like that. And again, memories from kids and parents and grandparents and QSL cards and a topo map of Colorado where we lived for a few years, and we definitely miss the mountains, but we've got the Ozarks, and they're a lot less populated, at least the places I hang out. So if we sit down and take a look again at the operator view, you have the operator position with the keyboard for controlling the computer, and then the drawer here also has another keyboard that can be pulled out and used, whatever that was, whenever I'm doing any digital work or use contesting where you use the memories in the computer. And then I keep a laptop over here on the side, which is of course always wanting to update something, but it's usually just running one of the old Telnet servers for chasing DX and watching stuff without being actively involved in what's going on. Of course it won't close when you want it to. There it goes. So and you might recognize the Beaver Bridge in my previous motorcycle. Scanning on around, there's an older ICOM that has VHF, UHF with a kind of dim display, so it's a little hard to see. Got a few Morse Express straight keys purchased used from an estate sale, and the digital clock there I built from a kit back in 1976, so it's probably older than some of the members, but not as old as some of the others. But anyway, it's just manually set. Nice 7-segment display for the time, and next to that is a scroll call sign desk plate, whatever you want to call it. A friend made from an old walnut tree that was in my grandfather's yard, who was K5 VRC, and a friend did some scroll sawing and made that for me several years ago. Of course, there's the rotor controller that controls the beam you saw. The LEDs are quite bright, but they do well. Over here to the left of the 7610 is the spare TS480, which I run in my mobile, but I've got it here set up in case I needed to fire up to be able to get it on the air pretty quick if I needed to. I used Heil microphone. Sorry, Bob, it's not new, but purchased at a Hamfest with a great discounted price because the mic element was bad. One power supply over here operates the accessories. One of the bugs that I have here is the JHD, which is a opto isolator type of a bug. It actually uses optical isolators. I don't do a lot of bug work, but it's fun to pull out when we have special event days, mechanical days, or bug days. And this unit was a K4 VIZ vertical paddle. Its mechanism is up and down rather than laying horizontal like most bugs do. So got the couple of more down here in the shelf. So some would say I'm infested with bugs, but that's not a bad thing. Temporarily, I just have a ceiling mounted external speaker for the HF radio. I've got another one just like it where I can run 2 at a time. Another power supply, that's the main power supply for the HF rigs, and again the display up here just mimics the 7610. And to get a little more power in the wire, got the Alpha 89 full legal limit, 80 or 160 through 10, including the warp bands, and it does a great job. And right next to it for tuning the open, or the ladder line rather, is the AT4K tuner, which is quite a tuner. Takes up a lot of space, so you can kind of see on the desk it's about the same size as the Alpha amplifier. And all I have right now is just the little outdoor temperature weather station. And of course there's the outdoors, and still rather bright here on a Sunday afternoon. So the other station, it was not really a station, but the other computer over here is where the wife does more of her work with Photoshop and that kind of thing. So it's also a storage place for this purposes of this demo. So I was licensed in 1971. Original call was WN5 Frank Mike Kilo. Upgraded to general about a year or so later, and advanced, and then extra, and then in 77 I got the extra with the 2x1 call sign in memory of my grandfather, because at the time there was no such thing as the vanity program, so you couldn't pick a 1x3 call sign, but I did pick the 1x2 K5VR. So that's kind of the rundown of the setup here, and we'll hope to catch you all again soon, if not in person, on the air. So this is K5VR 73 from the greater Tontitown area. So as a follow-up to the videos you just watched, went back and listened, and obviously I misnamed the VHF UHF as an ICOM radio. It's actually a Kenwood, and said 2x1 instead of 1x2. So not slick on the impromptu video recording. So maybe after a few more of these, if I'm ever asked again, it'll be a little better. So again, 73, have a great meeting. I wish we could be there with you more. Maybe someday we'll be able to get back together again. So 73.
Welcome back. I hope you found these presentations enjoyable and informative. Thank you for being a participant. I invite you to stick around after the meeting to join us for a Q&A roundtable about tonight's presentations. You do not need to be a BVRC member to participate, but you must be a licensed amateur radio operator. We will be on the air using the NWA linked repeater system beginning at 8:30 p.m. local time. For more information on the link system, go to nwalinkSYS.org. Your comments, questions, and suggestions are welcome and encouraged. Please address these to info@BellaVistaRadioClub.org. Also, for more information on the Bella Vista Radio Club, visit our website at BellaVistaRadioClub.org. We invite you to be a member of the largest amateur radio club in the Northwest Arkansas region. We exist to serve the amateur radio community. 73, and stay safe. Good evening from W5XNA.